Welcome to episode 204 of the Health with Hashimoto's podcast. My name is Esther Youngkin. I'm a registered nurse, and this summer we're talking all about root causes. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Dee Davidson. Every third episode, even during the summer, is going to be an interview. Dee has so much to share with us because she is a board-certified functional health practitioner, and she's a hormone health expert. I think you're going to learn a lot in this interview. Welcome to the Health with Hashimoto's podcast. This is where you will find clarity and simple, sustainable strategies to feel better. I want to help you figure out your root causes. My name is Esther Youngkin. I am a registered nurse. I know how exhausting it is to live with fatigue, brain fog, and the ups and downs of Hashimoto's. And that is why I'm here. I'm here to cut through the confusion and to give you practical steps that support your body, calm your immune system, so that you can regain your energy and feel like yourself again. Welcome, Dee. Tell us a little bit about your story and what was the moment that you realized conventional medicine was not going to give you what you needed?
Oh, what a great question. Thanks for having me, first of all. Going back to conventional medicine, the point where I knew I needed to try something different actually had to do with my son. My son, who is now 14, when he was 3, we went to his regular checkup, and there we are, and they did a little finger prick to check for lead, and they check your iron levels. And they gave us a call and they said that he had low iron, borderline anemic. And I was like, wow, I'm really surprised because he is a really good eater. We eat red meat and raisins and all the high iron foods. I was that crunchy mom who made their food from scratch and, breastfed till he was 2. And I'm like, I'm doing all the right things. How can this be? So I gave him the medication, which of course brought his iron back to level. But then about 6 months later, he was having these really bad, intense stomach pains, and he couldn't sleep around the clock. I just remember sitting in the rocking chair, and that's all he wanted to do, sit there all night. And I already had another child, never encountered anything like this. I had my mother come over in the middle of the night because I was home by myself. My ex-husband used to work nights, and she's like, this is not normal, Dee. So I would go to the pediatrician. They told me you must be viral, let it pass. Then I went to the local ER. They told me you must be constipated, just give him Miralax. Then I went to the children's hospital. So this is going on for weeks. So I demanded that I wanted to see a GI specialist at Children's, and I did get that granted. Go to Children's Hospital, see the GI, a doctor, and I left there feeling humiliated, and I left there feeling dismissed when they looked at my child and they said, there is nothing wrong with him, but we will do a stool test just to make sure. Now, in my practice now, Esther, I do a stool test on anyone who tells me they have a stomach pain or a GI issue. So they do the stool test. I get a phone call and they said, oh, we did find some blood in his stool. So as we know, a lot of times it's microscopic and you can't see it. It's not like you're just seeing the blood when you go to the bathroom. And so at that time, I didn't really know the connection between blood loss and anemia and iron and all of that stuff, right? That's not something that was ever even brought up or discussed or nothing, right? So it was just take the iron medication. So they wanted to scope him because they said, well, we want to see what's going on. So they gave him an endoscopy and a colonoscopy. And again, he was 3 years old. So I'm watching him, get put under this little itty bitty thing. So he comes out and the doctor says to me, oh, we had a surprise in there. And I was like, what do you mean? And they told me that he had polyps in his intestinal tract at age 3. Now, we know that a lot of adults later in life have preventative colonoscopies to make sure they don't have polyps and they can have them removed and checked for cancer and all of that. Well, my son actually already had them. That was probably what was causing the bleeding and the anemia. And only because I pushed and pushed and pushed did I get even to that point, which is a blessing because now we know that he actually has a genetic disorder called juvenile polyp syndrome, and we can keep an eye on it. Now, here's the kicker. I asked the doctor at the follow-up appointment, what can I do to preventatively help him, from having this trigger? Because we know the whole epigenetics. We might be carriers of something, and I'm writing about this in my book, but does not mean that's your destiny. And the doctor looked at me and said, oh, don't worry about it now. It's not a pediatric cancer. if he's gonna get it, it's not gonna be until he's at least in his 30s. And he's like, and if you think you're gonna give him like spirulina and heal his gut or something, that's silly. So again, I was like, wow. Fast forward, I was at this little coffee shop with my girlfriend who I've known for like 20 years. And there was a woman there, and Nicole said, "Oh my God, do you two know each other?" I said, "No." And she's like, "I can't believe you don't know each other." Nicole is a functional health practitioner. And that was when I was in the middle of all that with my son. And I do believe that there are no accidents. I believe that God brought that connection together for so many reasons, Esther. So instantly, I knew I was like, oh, maybe this lady can help me with my son. So I got her card or whatever, and then I followed up with her, and she was amazing. She asked me so many questions without even seeing my son's chart. She was connecting all of the different systems in the body as opposed to just looking at his, his gut. And she really helped me. So we looked at a lot of different pieces of his health. Here we are. He's 14. He was 3, but he hasn't had any issues. No low iron, no polyps, no issues at all. And so that's when I really became intrigued with functional medicine and functional health. As I said, I was already doing health coaching. And so in 2000, I actually went back to the school that she went to, and here I am now. It's 2026. It's crazy to believe, but I do believe that traditional medicine, I'm not anti-doctor. If you break your bone, like we were just talking about with our boys, or you're in a car accident, having a heart attack, you need to go to the hospital. But they're limited to, again, what health insurance allows them to do. They're limited on time. You know this, you were working in the ER, and they don't look at all of the systems. They only look at whatever their specialty is. Even primary care doctors now, it is impossible to find one because they don't get paid well. And everyone's going into a specialty now. So I'm really passionate about helping people not just fix something and then, like the whack-a-mole, something else comes up, or being stuck in the cycle of trial and error, but really learning about their own body, where the disconnects are. And I believe that's mind, body, spirit.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. And one thing that stood out to me in your story with your son is everybody was telling you that he was normal. All of his labs were normal, all of his tests were normal, but you knew that there was something going on and you kept pushing. And that's what so many women are dealing with, and men that are
Mhm.
finally diagnosed with autoimmune problems, finally diagnosed with Hashimoto's. If they're listening to this podcast, probably that's their story. And I'm just so proud of you for pushing and pushing and pushing, because somebody has to advocate. So you have to advocate for yourself. If you're not a kid, you don't have a mom to advocate for you. And now that's what you help your clients do. And you said there's like that 30% who you weren't able to help. Is there a commonality with that 30% that you have figured out? Is that where, like, you talk about minerals a lot? Is that where that came in?
Yes. I love looking at minerals. I geek out on the HTMA test specifically. The HTMA test is a non-invasive hair test. Someone can just cut a teaspoon of hair and mail it in. Of course, if you color your hair, you have to wait until you have a little bit of root. But the hair holds a lot of information. It tells us what's been going on in your body, specifically over about a 3-month period. So the difference between a hair test and a blood test for minerals is that when you go for a blood test, that's like real time, right? Like what's going on right now. But we really want to look at your, what I call vital reserve, your gas tank, your tank for the last 3 months, not a fluctuating blood test. And why that's important is because your minerals are your spark plugs. So they help with everything: your metabolism, your digestion, your detoxification, your energy production, stomach acid. Everything is connected to your minerals. And for anyone listening who has no idea what a mineral might be, that could be something like everyone's taking magnesium, but they might not know why, or calcium for their bones and their teeth, or sodium. So some of those minerals might be depleted. And in order to feel your best, you first have to have the vital reserves. I tell my clients it is like your bank account. If you have a checking account and you're just at balance, and then you have a stressor. And when we talk about stressors, I like to point out that they can be external, financial, relationship, taking care of a child, your job. That can be an external, but you also can have hidden stressors such as bacterial overgrowths and parasites and low stomach acid and all of those things. When you have a big stressor or multiple stresses that equal a big one hit you, it hits your minerals, and then you're in overdraft and you just can't get back to feeling your best, to having that good sleep, to, going to the bathroom every day like you're supposed to. So the HTMA is one of the first tests that I do on everyone because if you don't have the vital reserve to heal, then you can't just take a supplement to get rid of something, whether it be H. pylori or a parasite or anything, and expect it to work because you don't have the gas in the gas tank to make that happen.
Right. Yeah, minerals are so important, and then our food has gone down in
Mhm,
minerals.
mhm.
So you take the hair test, and then what's the next step after that?
Yes, so when I take the hair test, I look at all of the the elemental ones, the ones we just talked about, like the magnesium, the calcium, and then we correlate. So I like to say don't treat paper. That's what doctors do, right? I have an extensive intake form where I learn about the person's life history. So if a woman's coming to me in that 30, 40, 80-year old, I'm going to look at everything that's happened in their life because that's really what's manifesting in their physical being. It's not just what's happened in the last month or even the last year. And then I'm going to take what comes back in the hair mineral analysis and start asking questions. So, for example, if someone has actually high calcium, I see a lot. Why do they have a high calcium shell? What kind of stress have they been under? That's a danger too with just taking random supplements without testing is, a lot of women are taking calcium's a great example of a supplement, calcium, because their doctor tells them they have to be careful of bone loss and all of these things. But the reality is, for calcium, if you're under a lot of stress, which most of my clients are, even if they deny it, they can be creating what we call a calcium shell. Have you heard of this, Esther?
I have not, no.
So, a calcium shell is where your body perceives threat. So, you might think, oh, I'm fine, with my 4 kids and my business and my husband and running around all day and maybe skipped a meal here and there, but I'm good, right? But your body is like, no, you're not good. So, what it starts to do is it starts to pull calcium out of your bones, your hair, your teeth, your nails, and it starts to create what we call a calcium shell. It's like a bullet shell around every single cell in your body. And so that's the first marker that I look at on the test. That's how it's lined up. And so if you have a calcium shell, likely a lot of your other minerals are going to be tanked because you have this hardening around your cells. And anything you eat or drink, it's trying to get through that and it doesn't penetrate very well. But calcium shells are a big thing that I see on there. And then I look at the other minerals and I look at each function. So, like magnesium for rest and relax and sleep. If someone's telling me they're having sleep issues and they're losing magnesium or they don't have enough, we're going to have to look at that. We're going to look at cobalt for stomach acid. So, I know all the little clues to look for. If someone tells me they're getting bloated, they probably don't have the stomach acid to break down food properly, and that's why they get in that bloat. So cobalt's associated with that. The sodium potassium thing is big for people with anxiety or heart palpitations. A lot of people just think I have anxiety, but their minerals are off balance or completely depleted. Those are your electrical signs there. So I look at all of the main ones. There are about 10 or 12 of them. And then the part that I really love is at the bottom, it tells me what's stressing your body out the most. We look at some ratios, and I describe it as taking your car to one of those diagnostic machines where they hook up your car and then this report comes out, and you're like, oh, yeah, you need a new bop, 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 or this screw's loose or cracked. It gives me a great idea of what hidden stressors or what's really stressing your body out the most internally is. And those markers, they do not lie. And when I have conversations with people, they cannot lie to me. They might tell me that they're not stressed or, oh, no, this is fine, or I balance my blood sugar. But the markers on there are amazing and they tell a lot. The first one is, are you stuck in fight or flight?
Mhm.
So
That's a big one.
so many women are stuck in fight or flight. They think that they can be super mom, super boss, multitask. You know this with autoimmune because I have a lot of autoimmune clients. That's one of the biggest things that I see with autoimmune clients is they're stuck in fight or flight. They're people pleasers. These are the things we have to talk about, not just taking supplements, but where is your life out of whack, out of balance? Where are you serving everyone and everything, but not yourself? And how do we get you more into parasympathetic and not sympathetic dominant, where you can be in a state of healing, rest and digest properly. So that marker I see a lot of times people are stuck in fight or flight, and that's not going to be take a supplement. That's going to be slowing down, boundaries, breath work, nervous system regulation, all of those things. So that is a key marker. The next one from that is how much has fight or flight affected you at a cellular level. So it will tell me if you're in what we call an exhaustive or collapse phase, which means that your body is now starting to break down. And that's where we start to trigger the dirty genes that we might be carrying, right? You might be carrying a gene that's you don't want to activate, but when you're in chronic stress, that's when it can tend to trigger. It can cause cellular dehydration, and you can see that the minerals are tanked at the top that you need. It also can be linked to things like negative mindset, limiting beliefs. So when I have those conversations, a lot of times women start crying because they feel like they're always going to be overweight, that they're going to be doomed to have this autoimmune diagnosis, that they're stuck on medication for the rest of their life. So that's an interesting marker. We have blood sugar. So a lot of times I'll use a CGM or one of those little circle things people wear to see. And I do that because I think that a lot of people think that their blood sugar is okay because, again, they go to the doctor and they have a blood test, which just tells them they're fasting glucose, and their fasting glucose might look okay. But throughout the day, they might be on this blood sugar roller coaster that's causing inflammation and causing their mood to go up and down and causing anxiety, panic, waking up at night, all of these things. So there is a marker on there that will tell me how well you've been doing with blood sugar regulation for the last 3 months. And then I can see like, well, you might want to, do some monitoring around that and learn about your body and what's impacting that. Because, I just want to pause there. A lot of people think, well, I don't drink soda, or I don't eat candy, and I don't eat a high sugar diet, or eat low carb. But there are a lot of things that impact our blood sugar. So I think it's important for people to take note that stress will elevate cortisol, which will elevate your blood sugar. Coffee on an empty stomach, caffeine, all these little things that people don't really understand until they actually see the numbers and wear a CGM. Your adrenals, so back to stress. Your adrenals are, I call it your backup to your main stress response, your cortisol. So if you think of like a hybrid car, it goes through electric, and then when you run out, it goes to gas. So when you run on cortisol for too long, you start to tax your adrenal glands, which are above your kidneys. And that's when you get like the waking up in the morning after a full night's sleep and you're exhausted. That's when you're having the afternoon crash where you're reaching for coffee. That's where you're exhausted after your workouts. So we look at how long have you been taxing your body with this stress, and how are your adrenals? We can look at your hormone balance. So instead of spending $400 on a Dutch hormone test, even though I have an advanced certification in hormone health, I'm not an advocate for spending thousands of dollars on tests unless we know that we need them. Your hormones are your check engine light. It's the invitation to look under the hood and see, well, what's causing the hormones to be off balance. And so on the HTMA, there is a marker that tells me if we should explore that further. But again, before we actually get a hormone test done, we'll work on what things could be, causing your imbalance in your hormones.
I had no idea that you could see like blood sugar history and hormones with a hair test. I had no
Blood
idea.
sugar, hormones, you can look at if there's a silent infection possibly like Guillain-Barré or Lyme, there's a ratio for that on there. There's a ratio that tell me like if you're low in a mineral, that could be causing anxiety. So there's a lot of patterns, and it's not just a piece of paper. It's great to know. I definitely recommend it for someone who doesn't know what supplements they should be taking because it's an inexpensive test. And instead of just popping a bunch of different things, you can see, well, what do I really need? But it does tell you where your body's suffering the most with those markers, as well as it looks at some heavy metal toxicity. A true heavy metal toxin test is a urine or a blood test, but this can give us a baseline idea because if you have aluminum or mercury or lead coming through your hair follicle, there probably is a lot heavier load in your body than what's showing up in your hair, and you can determine based on that load if you wanna do some safe detoxing or if you need to do an actual total toxin urine test, so you can also see, well, how toxic is how polluted is my environment. So that test for me, I think everyone should do it, like, once a year because we go through different stressors, we travel, and it's a good reading for not a lot of money, what's going on and am I okay? And a lot of people will see it and they'll go, "Oh, good. Like I am actually doing pretty well." And maybe they have a couple of things, but it's a good place to start and not have to invest thousands of dollars in functional labs.
Right.
Mm.
Yes, because I feel like you cover so much stuff with your hair test where other people are just going to want to add on test after test after test because there's always more that you can learn. There's always more that you can do that is both a benefit and a bad thing about our current environment of where people are empowered to take their health into their own hands.
Thanks for saying that. We can get stuck in, especially when you get like an autoimmune diagnosis, then you're like, well, 100 other things are going to happen to me, or I'm stuck with Hashimoto's. And I've had a lot of people, we can't make claims, but put their Hashimoto's in remission at least, right? A lot of people get caught in that. Like, what other tests? Maybe I should check this. I better get ahead of this. The diets, the restrictions, the fear around food, not knowing what to eat. It can get really mental health taxing, I call it. You can really get yourself in a bad place with your mindset.
And before we hit record, we were talking a similar vein about food and then people getting scared. Specifically, we're talking about oxalates, which I have an episode about. And I love your perspective on that. Will you share that now that we're recording?
Sure. So, I was sharing with Esther that I went to this biohacking conference in October, and some people were really like, I'm just going to say crazy. They're just crazy about everything, intense, I guess, right? And they eliminate all these things. Oxalates was one of them, lectins, all these things. And when I first started getting into holistic health 2 decades ago, I did, like, change my products, got water filtration, all of that stuff, and I was barely eating out. I was eating all home-cooked meals and all of these things, right? I was taking, like, 20 supplements, like, craziness. And then as I went along my journey, I realized it really wasn't sustainable for me to live a life of joy. That's me personally. It doesn't mean that I don't eat like a bunch of processed food, but we do go out to eat a couple times a week. I do allow myself to have coffee out if I want to and not think about the fact that it's not organic and might have mold, right? Like you have to kind of live a little. And when I approach this with my clients, I do have all of these different resources in my app with the HTMA, the hair test, you get this whole resource bank that tells you how to address each marker. And then it will also tell you things you can switch. And it tells you about the water filtration and mold coffee and all that stuff. But what it tells you is that you can personalize what choices you make for you and your household based on your family history. So oxalates, a lot of people that eat oxalates say that they're, prone to gout or kidney stones and things like that. I don't have any of that in my family. So for a while I was like, oh, you can't eat oxalates. But then I'm like, no, I'm going to eat them because no one in my family has that. And I haven't had an issue with it. Yes, we want to be preventive. We don't want to eat just a bunch of pesticide. But when it comes to food groups themselves, I do believe that it has to be personalized and you have to kind of just use your common sense to, is that an issue? Has that been an issue for me? Is that an issue for my family? Again, the testing's really great. That really helped me. I did the food testing and not a food sensitivity test. I don't really believe in those. I cringe in them a little bit because that's more gut health related. If you heal your gut, a lot of your food sensitivities go away. But the test that I like to do is a Zoomer test. The Zoomer test looks at only like you can order from 5 to 10 different foods. The main ones, especially for your autoimmune listeners, are things like gluten, grains, eggs, dairy, peanuts. So like the main things that are problematic for people. So the thing is to really just, like you said earlier, use your common sense and think about what's important for me. What foods do I find joy in eating? What makes me feel good? We have become so disconnected from ourselves that is one of the biggest things I work on with my clients is really getting in touch and in tune with your body to see, like, well, how did I feel 60 to 90 minutes after I had that meal? Did it keep me full for 3 hours? Was my energy down? Was I anxious?
We have covered so much. I am super excited for everybody listening. How can they connect with you and learn more if they're interested in all of this? Or more importantly, how can they do that hair test with you?
Yes, the hair test and all the information about working with me in my programs. I have group programs, one on one. I have, take home tests like the HTMA can be found on my website, confidentlyloveyourself.com. Again, confidentlyloveyourself.com. You can also find me on Instagram, confidently_love_yourself.
Awesome. And if there's one thing, what is the most important thing?
Yes, the one thing I would say is if you feel like something's wrong, don't ignore it. Test, don't guess. And the simple hair test, you can at least have peace of mind to say, well, let me see and look at those checks and just make sure that there's nothing I need to explore further and deeper.
This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Please discuss any changes with your trusted healthcare provider. To take your next step, join our school community and explore the courses available there. You do not have to figure your health out alone. So that is school, SKOOL.com, and it is the Health with Hashimoto's community. I'll see you next time on the Health with Hashimoto's podcast.